I am Mom Aryan, your science teacher, and welcome to Science 8, Quarter 4, Week 4.
Our most essential learning competency, or MELC 24, explain the concept of a species. First, let's have our prayer. For your attendance, take a screenshot while watching this video and send it to your teacher. Now, let's have our classroom rules. Minimize distractions. You are encouraged to study in a well-lit and well-ventilated area conducive to learning. Follow the safety protocols such as hand washing, disinfection, and social distancing. Follow the teacher's instructions. Be honest and fair and have respect and care.
You can always pause this video to answer your activities. And of course, have fun.
From your grades 3 to 7, you have studied some of the different organisms and their easily observable characteristics. You learned about those organisms that you find just around you and other places in the country. You also learned about the different ways the organisms reproduce and the similarities of offsprings to their parents. To review, answer the following activity.
Activity number 1, kaninong nanay ka? Who is the offspring? Choose the correct offspring of the following organisms. Did you got 3 and above? Awesome!
For this lesson, our objectives are explain the concept of species, appreciate the value of different species, create a material that promotes protection and conservation of endangered and economically important species. Aside from humans that inhabiting the earth, there are different types of organisms that you can see around us. There are mammals like dogs and cats, insects such as spiders and ants, birds like chickens and doves, and plants from fruit-bearing trees to flowering plants. However, we tend to group species according to their appearance only, where in fact, there are different bases in identifying them, whether it is of the same species or a separate one. At present, there are several definitions and concepts of species, but the widely used definition of species is the biological concept of species. It was first proposed by Ernst Mayr in 1942. His concept begins with the idea that species is a population of individuals that can actually or can potentially breed with each other in nature to produce fertile offspring. Members of different populations mate, but produce no fertile offsprings, or very rarely breed with each other. They are considered to be different species. For example, all dogs are capable of interbreeding. Biologists consider all dogs to be members of the same species. However, if horses and donkeys mate, they produce mule. But mules are sterile and cannot continue to interbreed. Therefore, horses and donkeys are not members of the same species. These rules consider animals to be different species if they cannot breed together or if they can breed together and produce infertile offsprings, meaning offsprings that cannot have their own babies.
Classifying living things is kind of like Pokemon. It appeals to our instinct to collect and identify. And the fact that we have a classification system is super useful for scientists. I mean, it shows how every type of organism we know is connected to all the others. We've mapped out all of life in one giant chart. It's amazing when you think about it. But deciding how to classify a new type of organism often isn't simple, especially when it comes to assigning it a species. In some cases, it's obvious when two things should be separate species. A jellyfish clearly is very different from a jaguar. But the more similar organisms get, the harder it can be to sort them. There's no one rule that will always tell you whether two organisms should be in the same species. So different taxonomists use different rules in different situations. The most widespread definition of a species is called the biological species concept, or BSC. It was popularized by evolutionary biologist Ernst Mayr in 1942, and he continued to refine the idea over the next several decades. According to the BSC, organisms are part of the same species if they can produce offspring that can also breed. If they can't produce fertile offspring, that means they belong to separate species. The BSC hinges on the idea of reproductive isolation, where something separates two species to the point that they're not compatible anymore. That separation could be time, or geography, or behavior, or physiology. Alder and willow flycatchers used to be considered part of the same species because they meet up in the wild, they look the same, and it seems like they should be able to breed. But ornithologists eventually realized they're totally different species. They sing different songs to attract different mates, so alder flycatchers never try to mate with willow flycatchers. They're reproductively isolated. A species is therefore basically a gene pool, one that doesn't overlap with the gene pools of other species. That's a good, rigorous scientific definition. It can be tested and observed in the wild. But there are lots of cases where it doesn't work, like with microorganisms. Bacteria, for example, don't reproduce sexually. They can share genetic material with each other, but it's not part of the reproductive process. So reproductive isolation is totally irrelevant, and a scientist looking to classify a new species of bacteria can't rely on the BSC. Instead, they might look at genetics, at the shape of the microorganisms and the way they grow, and at their evolutionary relationships to other organisms. You also can't use the BSC to classify fossils, since you can't exactly observe the mating behavior of a skeleton preserved in rock. Sometimes you get unbelievably lucky and two specimens are preserved while they're mating, but that's way too rare to be definitive about which animals mated with which other ones. That's why paleontologists usually use morphology, or the physical characteristics of a creature, to classify it. Then there's the issue of hybrids, where creatures that should be part of separate species mate. When two species hybridize, there are a number of things that can happen. Often, even if they produce offspring, the offspring are sterile. That's what happens when you cross a female horse and a male donkey, for example. The offspring are mules, and mules can't breed. But sometimes, two species can produce fertile offspring, and biologists have found that animal species hybridize way more often than we used to think. If the offspring go on to mate with their parental species, it's called introgression. It provides a means for gene flow between two species, meaning their gene pools aren't totally isolated. So, does that mean that you have to revoke their status as separate species? Scientists haven't settled that question yet, but some think the barriers between species are much leakier than the biological species concept allows. Sometimes this leakiness can lead to two groups being classified as subspecies within a single species. Subspecies give you a little wiggle room. Sometimes organisms overlap geographically and can share genes. In cases like these, subspecies means we know that they can share genes. It's just that they usually don't. Then there are ring species. In California, for example, there's a species of salamander that lives in overlapping populations of subspecies on either side of the San Joaquin Valley in a big elongated ring. Those subspecies can all interbreed except for two. At the southern part of the ring, two subspecies can't interbreed. So, according to the BSC, those two subspecies should actually be separate species. But even though they can't interbreed, genes can still flow between them through the other subspecies. Where does that put them? You can't answer that question with the BSC. So having a hard and fast definition of species that you can test and demonstrate is useful, like in conservation when you're looking to protect a species and its habitat, but the biological species concept isn't an absolute rule that scientists are bound to. It's a tool, and scientists try to select the best tool for the job. That might be the BSC, and it might not. It depends on what you're studying.
Sana'y may natutunan kayo sa inyong napanood.
Activity number 2, true or false. Write true if the statement is correct and write false if the statement is not correct. If you got 2 and above, good job! Don't forget to stay focused if you want to have better scores. Activity number 3, video analysis. Watch the video and answer the following activity.
Hybrid animals are the offspring produced when two different animals with similar genetics breed. Whether it's the result of natural animal magnetism or the meddlings of mankind, the results are rather special. These cross-species pairings are actually quite a rare natural occurrence, and more often than not, these come from animals bred in captivity. Welcome to the list of the top 5 rarest and most amazing hybrid animals.
Number 5.
A leopard is a hybrid resulting from a male leopard and a lioness. The head of the animal is similar to that of the lions, but the body carries similarities to that of the leopard. Leopards are almost the size of a lion, but they have stockier bodies, and their legs are shorter like the leopard's. They have little brown spots instead of the leopard's black spots, and the tail is like a lion's. An interesting fact about leopards is that unlike lions, they are excellent climbers, and they also love water, which often distresses their lioness mother. A lot of leopards have been bred in captivity, and one of the most famous cases of leopards being bred was at a park in Japan in the late 50s, where one of the leopards survived for more than 20 years. This was pretty mind-blowing, as the longest recorded lifespan of a leopard in captivity was 23 years, or a lion, which has the average captive life expectancy of 13 years. There is also a report of a leopard and lioness mating in natural circumstances. The lioness was expelled from her pride and formed a partnership with a leopard, and they lived happily ever after. Well, I'm not too sure about that part, but I hope so.
Number 4.
The Kama is a cross between a male camel and a female llama. Because of the huge difference in size between camels and llamas, the only way the Kama can be made is through artificial insemination. The Kama inherits the long tail and short ears of the camel, and the llama contributes to the cloven hooves. Interestingly though, they do not have humps. The first Kama was born on January the 14th, 1998. The aim was to create an animal capable of higher wool production than the llama, but with the size and strength of a camel, but with a more cooperative temperament.
Number 3.
The growler bear is a hybrid between a polar bear and a grizzly bear. Sometimes called the pizzly bear, this bear hybrid has occurred naturally and in captivity. The bear tends to have white fur with brown patches. They also have long claws, a concave facial profile, and a humped back, which are all the characteristics of the grizzly. It was first found in the wild in Canada by a game hunter who sadly shot and killed it. The body of the growler bear was quickly seized by officials and sent for DNA testing. The test confirmed it was a super rare naturally born growler bear. Some experts predict that polar bears may be forced to breed with grizzlies more frequently due to global warming, and the fact that polar bears are slowly being forced from their natural habitats into the habitat of the grizzly bear.
Number 2.
No hybrid animal list would be complete without the addition of the liger. The liger is a hybrid cross between a male lion and a female tiger, and it resembles a giant lion with diffused stripes. Ligers are extremely sociable animals. They are happy and content living with both lions and tigers. They have bigger and stronger bones than a lion or tiger, and they also have much larger teeth. In fact, they are the largest cats in this world. They are much bigger than the Siberian tiger and sometimes more than twice the size of a tiger or lion. And like tigers but unlike lions, ligers absolutely love swimming. They were first introduced around the end of the 19th century, and they were created for one reason: to attract crowds and make money at places like zoos and circuses. Since lions and tigers don't exist in the same areas, this is something that does not happen in the wild. Ligers are only ever produced in captivity.
Number 1.
The wolfin is a very, very rare hybrid, a cross between a false killer whale and a bottlenose dolphin. Wolfins are the perfect example of a crossbreed, as their shape, colour and size are very much a mixture of features borrowed from dolphins and whales. Even though there have been reported sightings of them in the wild, apparently there are only 2 wolfins in existence, and they can be found at a sea life park in Hawaii. Studies on wolfins in captivity show that the wolfin tends to possess a mix of both parents' physical characteristics. For example, the dark grey skin of the wolfin appears to be a mix between the false killer whale's black skin and the bottlenose dolphin's light skin. And that brings my list of the top 5 rarest and most amazing hybrid animals to an end. I jolly well hoped you liked it, and as always, thank you for watching.
Hindi ba ang galing? Mayroon palang mga ganong uri ng hayop. Sana ay natuwa ka rin sa iyong napanood. Ngayon, tumako naman tayo sa ating susunod na gawain. Same species or not? Using the definition of species below, answer whether the animal belong to the same species or not. Did you got 3 and above? You did a great job!
Now let's have these questions. First, what are species? Second, what happens when 2 organisms of the same species mate? And third, why can 2 organisms of different species produce an offspring? You may pause this video while answering your activity.
Keep on working! You're doing a great job! I cannot wait to see the results of your activity.
The value of species can be divided into 3 categories. 1. Direct economic value. 2. Indirect economic value. And 3. Aesthetic value. Direct economic value is the utilization of biological resources either for direct consumption or for commercial purposes. Example is the rattan that is primarily used for the construction of furniture. Indirect economic value is when there are benefits produced by species even without us using them. For example, certain plant species maintain the chemical quality of natural water bodies, prevent soil erosion and floods, cycle minerals in the soil, and absorb pollutants. Aesthetic value of species refers to the feeling of pleasure derived from the appreciation of high biodiversity in a certain area. This includes a panoramic view of tropical forests or species diversity of plants and animals that lead to recreation and tourism.
The value of species. Categorize the value of each species, whether it is direct economic value, indirect economic value, or aesthetic value.
let's have these processing questions. 1. Is having many different species important for our environment? Why? Second, do you know of any endangered species in the Philippines? In Quezon Province? Can you cite examples? Third, how do humans cause destructions in the environment? And last, why does human action affect the animals and plants and their living environment? You may pause this video to answer this activity.
You may write your answers in your science journal, and I salute you for your patience and diligence.
Madaming hayop sa buong mundo ang itinuturing ang ating bansa bilang kanilang tahanan. Kinilala ng Conservation International, isang non-profit environmentalist group na nabuo noong 1987, ang Pilipinas bilang ika-17 na mega-diverse country sa buong mundo. Ibig sabihin nito, mega-diverse countries are nations that shelter the bulk of Earth's animal and plant life. Ibig sabihin, ito ang mga bansang may iba't ibang biodiversity in terms of genetic, genus, and bionetwork mixtures. Dahil nga sa biological diversity na meron ang ating bansa, madami din ang threatened animal species. Ayon sa Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources o IUCN, mayroong declared na 418 animal species sa Pilipinas na threatened. Ibig sabihin, sila ay vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered.
Mabuhay Pilipinas! Salamat po at nakarating kayo sa aming channel. Kung first time mo dito, please click subscribe and the notification button for future happenings. Start na po tayo!
Ngayon, pag-uusapan natin ang 10 sa mga critically endangered animals sa ating bansa. Una sa ating listahan ay ang Philippine Eagle o ang tinatawag na monkey-eating eagle. Alam naman nating lahat na ang Philippine Eagle ang ating pambansang ibon. Ito ay pinapaniwalaan na one of the largest and most powerful birds on Earth. A full-grown adult can grow to as big as 4 feet at pwede itong tumimbang sa humigit kumulang 9 kilograms. Pinapaniwalaan na critically endangered ang Philippine Eagle dahil sa deforestation, mining, at pollution. Pangalawa, ang Philippine freshwater crocodile o mas kilala bilang Mindoro crocodiles. Ito ay endemic sa Pilipinas. Ang Philippine freshwater crocodile ay mas maliit kumpara sa iba pang mga crocodiles. Ito ay pwedeng lumaki ng 4 feet and a half to 5 feet long at pwedeng bumigat hanggang 15 kilograms. Noong September 2011, sinasabi na 250 na lamang ang natira na Philippine freshwater crocodile sa ating bansa. Pinapaniwalaan na dahil ito sa illegal hunting at dynamite fishing, kaya bumaba ang kanilang bilang. Pangatlo sa ating listahan ay ang tamaraw. Ito ay kilala din bilang Mindoro dwarf buffalo. Ang tamaraw is the only known bovine that is indigenous to the Philippines. Bovine ay ang mga family ng animal kabilang ang cattle, ox, at buffaloes. Sa ngayon, ang population ng tamaraw sa Pilipinas ay nasa 200 na lamang. Sinasabi na ang dahilan nito ay ang illegal hunting, logging, at residential land clearing. Pang-apat sa ating listahan ay ang Walden's hornbill o tinatawag natin dito sa Pilipinas bilang kalaw. Ito rin ay tinatawag na Visayan wrinkled hornbill. kalaw ay endemic na sa Philippine Islands ng Panay at Negros. Ngunit ito pa rin ay pwedeng matagpuan sa regions ng Zamboanga del Norte sa Mindanao. Ang excessive hunting at illegal logging ang dahilan kung bakit bumaba ang populasyon ng kalaw sa ating bansa. Panglima sa ating listahan ay ang Visayan wartypes. Ito ay land mammal na dati ay matatagpuan sa Central Visayas, lalo na sa Cebu. Ngunit ngayon, ito ay matatagpuan na lamang sa dalawang island na Panay at Negros. Ayon sa mga eksperto, naniniwala sila na may mga matatagpuan pang Visayan wartypes sa Masbate, pero ito ay hindi pa kumpirmado. Sa ngayon, matatagpuan ng Visayan wartypes sa wild, ngunit limitado na lamang. Pang-anim ay ang Philippine cockatoo. Ito ay tinatawag din na kalangay, katala, or the red-vented cockatoo. Ang Philippine cockatoo ay indigenous sa Pilipinas. Sinasabi na 180 na lamang ang population ng Philippine cockatoo na matatagpuan sa Palawan. Itinala ang Philippine cockatoo bilang critically endangered dahil sila ay binebenta sa mga private collectors at pet enthusiasts. Ang pito sa ating listahan ay ang Negros breeding heart. Ito ay isang uri ng pigeon na endemic na sa island ng Negros at Panay. These birds always come in pairs or in flock. Ibig sabihin, mas madali silang mahuli para ibenta. Ang pagbaba ng populasyon ng Negros breeding heart ay dahil sa ongoing deforestation at excessive hunting para sa kanyang meat at exotic pet black market. Pangwalo sa ating listahan ay ang Philippine naked-back fruit bat o tinatawag din na Philippine bareback fruit bat. Ito ay ang mga malalaking paniki na matatagpuan sa kuweba ng Negros Island. Noong 1980s, ginawang sugarcane plantations ang mga gubat kaya bigla na lamang nawala ang mga paniki na ito. Noong 1996, itinala na bilang extinct ang mga hayop na ito, ngunit ibinalik noong 2000 bilang critically endangered dahil nadiskubre nila na meron pang natira. Susunod naman ay ang Philippine forest turtles. Ito ay tinatawag din na Palawan turtles or Leyte pond turtles. Ito ay freshwater turtle na native sa Palawan Islands. Bumaba ang populasyon ng Philippine forest turtles dahil sa habitat loss at too much catching by collectors. Last sa ating listahan ay ang dinagat bushy-tailed cloud rat. Ito ay uri ng cloud rat na indigenous sa Dinagat Island dito sa Pilipinas. Isa itong nocturnal animal at herbivores. Ang dinagat bushy-tailed cloud rats ay muntik nang masali sa extinct animals dahil sa kawalan ng natural habitat dahil sa deforestation, chromite mining at excessive hunting. Kabilang na din sa dahilan ng kanilang pagiging critically endangered ay ang kanilang cloud rat meat na ginagawang delicacy ng mga lokal. Kung mapapansin ninyo, karamihan sa mga dahilan o lahat ng dahilan ng pagiging critically endangered ng mga hayop ay dahil sa ating mga gawa, katulad na lamang ng deforestation, illegal logging at pagkokolekta sa mga animals na ito. Ang Pilipinas ay pinagpalang mabigyan ng katakot-takot na iba't ibang uri ng likas na yaman. Hindi pa man napapakinabangan ng hustoy, heto na ang mga signos na mauubusan na tayo ng panahon. Kailangan nating pangatawanan ang tinakdang batas laban sa mga walang pakundangang naninira rito. Ito lamang kasama ang isang magandang educational campaign ang paraan upang maipaglaban ang yamang ito. Mabigat nga ang parusa, subalit mas mabigat dalhin ang isang mundong kinalbonan ng likas na yaman. May kasabihan na hindi natin pagmamay-ari ang kamunduhan. Ito ay pansamantala at ipinahiram at dapat pangalagaan natin para sa kapakanan ng susunod na henerasyon.
Ngayon, handa ka na bang i-apply ang iyong mga natutunan?
As a resident of Quezon and a grade 8 student of Lucena Dalahican National High School, what are some stories or your opinion on endangered and economically important animals in Quezon? For example, the pawikan, the baboy ramok, pagi, etc.
Activity number 5, to serve and to protect.
Our goal is to protect and conserve endangered and economically important species in the Philippines.
Based on your gifts, talents, and hobbies, choose one of the following. Take note, this performance task can be done individually or by group. It can also be done in English, Filipino, or your own native language.
Follow the safety measures such as hand washing, disinfection, and social distancing. Ask for adult supervision, especially when dealing with hazardous objects. Also, to conduct your performance task in a safe and appropriate area that promotes fairness and respect. Here is the criteria for this performance task.
Let's get ready for your assessment. Good luck!
Assessment. Fact or bluff? Write fact if the statement is correct and bluff if the statement is incorrect. You are asked to type in your answers using your cell phone, using any of the following.
Congratulations! You are now at the last part of this lesson.
Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Calabarzon had a news last February 14, 2022 entitled Rescued Philippines Caps Owl Released Immediately in Sariaya, Quezon. You may pause this video for you to read the news. For your reflection as a resident of Quezon Province, what is your opinion or comment regarding this news? And what can you do as a grade 8 student of Lucena Dalahican National High School to protect our local animals and plants?
That's the end of our lesson. See you again on our next Teliwanag episode. I am Ma'am Aryan, your science teacher. If you have questions or clarifications, you may contact me on my social media accounts. And remember, ang batang nagsisikap, maliwanag ang hinaharap. Bye!